Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to round 5 of the RaceFace.Pro LMU Championship here at the beautiful sands of Qatar, located in the upper regions of Africa. It's incredibly hot, even though that it's a little bit dark. Joining me in the box is the one, the only man that it stares into the sun when he gets a photograph taken, Cameron de Bastos. Cameron, welcome to Qatar.
That was a good one, and I only get blinded by the sun because you don't decide to move in front of me. But good evening, Stephen, and good evening, everybody out there in the virtual grandstand. Well, you touched a bit on it, Stephen. We're at Qatar, the Lusail circuit, a beautiful circuit, originally opened in 2004, and hosted the Qatar Motorcycle Grand Prix for the first time in that same year. However, in 2007, they added outdoor lighting, which allowed for night races, and it gave us this beautiful circuit and an opportunity to do night races, as well as race these GT3 cars around here. And we are thankful for them, because it is absolutely beautiful here in Qatar at the Lusail International Circuit. Now, Stephen, we've seen the drivers during during practice set some lap times, and it's difficult to really pick a favorite out there. Who do you think has his hand on the trophy? I mean, we already saw, can confirm today that Carl Oosthuizen has signed out for today's race, along with another driver that unfortunately I don't completely see, I can't recall the name now, but so two drivers have already signed out.
He has a nose, he has hair, and, well, might have hair, but we do confirm that he has got a nose. It's not Voldemort. But
no, it's not Voldemort, no. But
it's a very interesting question.
On
It's a very, very interesting question. But first of all, we've got to go and talk about the absolute legends joining us in the virtual grandstands in the heat. Welcome to everyone out in the virtual grandstands. Lovely to have you here. We have got the Stingers coming in force with Sums. We've also got Daniel de Villiers going and saying how's it. Big shout out also going in towards the Stingers. We've also saw the Racing Snails. Previously over the last weekend, we saw Benjamin Till, who was racing in a overseas league, so shout out to him, been doing rather well. And Daniel de Villiers of PWSR, they've also been making some headway in the world of sim racing, so shout out to them. Good to have you guys here. And to all those that haven't replied yet, it's good to have you out, chat. But you brought up about who do I feel's got the finger on the pulse here. We've got a very interesting fight. Gerrit Bucus, who was leading the championship, is now third place. We've got Martin Jacobs and Johan Bloknoot of Team RTA going and fighting against one another. I have to say, I'm going to go out the ballpark here. I'm going to have to lean on Martin against Johan Bloknoot. Reason for this one. If you look at the two, they fight it out. Bloknoot tends to think a little bit more of backing off, where Jacobs, as we've seen previously in the hypercars, the man knows how to drive, but knows how to put the fight in. Gerrit Bucus, I do think, is right at the top there for the Stingers, but doesn't have the backup from the teammates to deal with the fight. Martin Jacobs, who currently holds second place with a 57.172 to Gerrit Bucus, 57.02. My money is on these two, Bucus and Jacobs. I think that is going to be the closest fight, and in terms of consistency to move their way forward. And
I have to agree with you on that.
That has to be the two that are holding on to the trophy at the moment. Third place, Brandon Kruger. Luck hasn't been on his side, unfortunately. Chris Collison, really quick driver, but just tapers off towards the end from what we've seen. I do want to point out a couple of drivers returning after having major damage to their car. Johan VDV, it seems like they got that BMW up and going. So Van der Vente out on the circuit with his brother. It's good to see him out there. But yes, my whole point to it is Bucus and Jacobs. This stage of the championship with, let's say, about 6, 7, 8, 3 rounds to go. The fight is between the two of them. I don't think Bloknoot is going to be in too much of a good stead right now, because he's fighting against his own teammate that will move him up the ladder. But then you've also got Bucus. So there's a team, but not quite a team effort coming in. And as we know, it's a driver's championship.
Well, you pretty much summed up everything there, Steve. And then also what's good to note is, yes, Collison has fantastic qualifying pace, but comes race, unfortunately, I do believe that the Lamborghini is just not capable of maintaining its tires throughout the race. And then also, we do have to note, during this week or over the past weekend, we have received a new BOP, balance of performance, that has been applied to cars across all circuits to allow some closer racing, but also has an effect on how the drivers experience. So they have to relearn pretty much how the cars are going to perform. I do not see out on circuit, unfortunately. Anyway, that was well, the young gun, Carl Lake, the rookie, who has made quite a bit of a name for himself in racing, but he is currently just sitting in the pits. I don't think the team are able to get the car out on circuit there, so might not be able to make it there. I haven't unfortunately had an opportunity or seen him in the pits, the paddock over the past week. However, Steve, while we're in this final 6 minutes of this qualifying, I'm quickly going to run over how the standings are and how that fight is currently going. You mentioned Martin Jacobs and Johan Blugnoot. Both of them are first and second. They are 9 points separated between one another. Two German manufacturers, BMW M4 and Mercedes-AMG GT3. These two are quite hammer and tongs of one another. We've seen it in the past where they go and they fight it out until the very, very end. And then in third place, just 2 points behind the likes of Johan Blugnoot, is Gerrit Perkins. Now, these are the top three. You spoke about them. You talk about how they are going to be able to maintain the pace and how they're going to run through it. Gerrit Perkins is able to extract something out of the Lamborghini, but we'll see how the car is going to perform after the BOP. With someone in the virtual grants saying, no, the Lamborghini is completely gone. Quality pace is good, but it is not much of a race car anymore after that balance of performance. So other than that, we have a significant gap between Gerrit Perkins and the third place and Sean Stradom in fourth. That is about almost 28 points is gap difference, but fourth and fifth separated by 1 point. Esteban Pretorius in a Lamborghini, old car, not Lamborghini, a McLaren 720S Evo is in fifth position. He's struggling to find out the pace in that car. He is trying it out. It's new to that car, so he's trying to learn it. And then in sixth place, we have Brandon Kruger. Me and you have spoken about him. He has not had the luck with only one podium finish throughout
and
the first,
as you say
the
that, he throws away the fastest lap time through the middle sector.
Talk about commentators first. Both Lamborghinis are fighting it out. Chris Collison is 7th behind Brandon Kruger on 36 points. So 5 points separate between the two of them. Now, Brandon Kruger had a bit of a coming together at Le Mans last week, and unfortunately that did dampen his championship hopes, unfortunately. But there is still a long way to go, so I do believe he will be able to get some points back. And then in 8th, we have Paul the Wall Feinter, all the way in a BMW, having said goodbye to the Lexus. And then right behind him is a Lexus driver, Ruan Kleinhans, in 9th position, hoping to claw some points back and haunt the dreams of Paul Feinter, whereas racing his old race car. And then finally in our top 10, Carl Oosthuizen, missing another race again. In second round, he had a DNF, and then in the third race, he has a DNS, so did not start. So tonight, he has another one close to his name, which is not going to count in his favor. So our closest battle is quite literally our top 5.
Yeah,
2 point separations, sometimes even 9 points. We do not know how this is going to swing, and yet it is quite early, Stephen, but we cannot call it just yet, as everything chops and changes. Drivers are going to have some difficult tracks. They're going to have cars struggling on those tracks. It is going to be quite an entertaining season.
Well, that's it. Brandon Kruger at the moment with a 156.2. I don't think he got the note that the Lamborghini's BOP doesn't quite work. He's ahead of Blugnoot in the BMW. Martin Jacobs holds on to third place. So RTA locking out the first row. Like Gerrit Perkins, unfortunately unable to improve on his last lap, currently in fourth place. Chris Collison down in fifth with Kubi Turon. Good to see him back out on track. Kirsten Peters as well. And Herman going and charging his way through. He's in 8th place with Brandon Holzhazen going in the Stealth Mobile. I would say BMW had the Batmobile in past. I think this is a bit of what the Batmobile is. I would prefer the white and blue, what the original Batmobile is, but it's pretty close. Neil Greening holds on to 10th. Jan Grimal holds on to 11th. 12th is Stanton Augustus. Gerard van der Venter a little bit down in 13th. Going and sporting the South African colours with the shell on it. Good to see. Rob van der Heever from the Griffin Sim Racing team out on circuit. Ruan Kleinhans, Johan van der Venter down in 17th position at the moment. And Lucas Jabert rounding out our grid thus far tonight. So a bit of a smaller grid and the usual mainstay players not around on the circuit. Grant Leclerc not on track. Paul Fenton not on track. The likes of Darren Miller, Devin Nell, Jeremiah Valatham, Vietia Buerta, Carl Lake, Mahaith Musa, all those drivers unable to make it onto the circuit tonight. So it's going to be an interesting take for it, but the question comes down. Qatar. It is a beautiful circuit. It has also been one that last season brought out some controversy where drivers were taking it to the limit and exceeding track limits. That's where we saw the pit stops coming in, the drive-thrus coming in. Has the drivers gone and worked it out enough on the circuit to say, okay, this is how far I can push? Also, with the change of format being a little bit longer, having to consider the fuel being utilized. It is a bit hot out there, plus it's in the dark. Yes, the track lights help, but that tends to take a bit of strain on everyone as well. Chris St. Peters currently holds on to 8th place. Brandon Holthazen down into 9th, trying to improve. Neil Greening into 10th. But no one at the moment able to beat this man out on track. A driver that didn't quite have the luck last race and has got the bit between his teeth is going to be lining up side by side with his own teammates on the front row, and Martin Jacobs squared behind him. I think for Gerrit Bucas, he's going to have the problem of a little bit of a backup, but at the same time, just play the game, wait it out. You know the fight's there. We saw the fight going back 2 rounds, where it was at Paul Ricard, where we saw the 3 come to blows with one another. This man was able to make up the difference and close it up. He's going to have a little bit of backup with Chris Collison right on the back of him as well. So the Stingers are coming with a bit of force to ensure that they stay in for the fight. Might be a little bit back, but they do lock out sitting 4th and 5th at this point, which means Ferret's got a little bit of closer help this time around.
No, absolutely, Stephen. And also just a quick note that I do see on the championship table, we do have 2 cars that have decided to withdraw, having the car not being able to ship anymore, or just having too much damage on the car, calling out with the likes of Grant Leclerc, as well as Jody Searman, another driver that we have seen before having some damage done on the car, not able to fix it in time to ship it all the way to Qatar. But we did mention the track limits. Unfortunately, Qatar, it's very, very flat. It is a flat circuit, and drivers are quite exposed to running those track line past the track limits as a way to gain a bit more pace. So it is something that we'll have to be careful for. But we mentioned the heat, Stephen, and we can be quite lucky to have an air-conditioned commentary box, one can say, as well as for these drivers, because otherwise, compared to the Formula 1 counterparts, these cars have an aircon, but we have to be careful because sometimes the air conditioning in these cars can also break. We have seen it before, and it's quite something to witness and not something fun.
As I found out this weekend, you can pull the window out. But
yes.
with that being,
but only on a Porsche.
A VW Motor Group, well done. But now the question comes in. Qualifying is out the way, and drivers at the ready. Fastest lap time is 156.2, set by Brandon Kruger. Johan Blicknote with a 156.5. Martin Jacobs sits with a 156.6. Gerrit Bucas sits with a 157.0, with Chris Collison a 157.2. Brandon Holthazen chases down with a 157.9. From there, we move into the 158s and 159s that will be chasing their times. This is where it gets interesting. This is where I think we've got to consider the factors. Drivers are going to push that a little bit harder. They're going to feel what's going to be happening on. And now, with the warmer temperatures, we're in for a rather exciting race. I think we're in for an interesting one, as we've got Brandon Kruger, Johan Blicknote, Martin Jacobs in 3rd place, along with Gerrit Bucas. A little bit further down the order, we have got Chris Collison, Brandon Holthazen, Kirby Turan, Herman Percival, Chris St. Peters, Neil Greening, Jan Grimmel, Stanton Augustus, Rob van der Heerve, Arno Kraus, Gerald van der Vente, Ruan Kleinans, Jan van der Vente, and Lucas Joubert rounding out the grid here tonight. For round 5, of the LMU Championship here at RaceFace.Pro, sponsored by EG Evolved. And you're getting to hear the voice of Cameron Bastos out on the radio to give him a little bit of a call out. And also, we have got the amazing voice from our own in-game stewarding going and saying, get ready, drivers. You're going to have some fun out on the circuit. I'm thoroughly looking forward to this race because this is a circuit that favors the brave but will punish the bold. And this is where you're going to have to think about it. We've got multiple teams as well, and we're starting to see more of the development in teams coming into racing. We've got the Team RTA coming out in full force. We have got the Stingers coming out in full force. We've got the likes of Griffin Sim Racing and so much more. Now everyone is looking to really step up through the field, and considering we're on round 5, this is make or break for these drivers and teams looking to get their jump off the line and kickstart their year in sim racing, as they've been waiting out for quite some time. But Cam, as we're building up to this, I hope you don't mind, let's go and have a little bit of fun. Brandon Kruger, Jan Blichnote on the front row. Martin Jacobs holds on to 3rd. Gerrit Bucas holds on to 4th place. Our top 4 looking to chase down. Chris Collison is going to be waiting in the wings along with Brandon Holthuizen. But as they make their way through, focusing on the lights, get ready, folks. There's mandatory pit stops. There's lots of racing. There's an hour and 20 minutes worth of racing. And this is round 5 of the championship. Ready to go. Lights on, lights on, lights on, and away we go racing. Charging down into turn 1. And oh my heavens, this thing does its own thing. But now we have got the likes of Jan Blichnote up into the lead. Brandon Kruger with Gerrit Bucas chasing down, and around the outside through turn 1 is the likes of Bucas to try and hold back Martin Jacobs. They run out wide and a little bit twitchy as those tires are cold, but all around the back, Kirby Turon having a brilliant run at Brandon Holthuizen right behind him. Jan Grimmel and Chris Collison getting into the play. Herman Percival, who's also trying to chase his way through. Chris Collison, unfortunately, falling way back in the field, not able to turn those tires on the way he would like. Has now got pressure from Herman and Neil Greening putting some pressure on the back. But clean start. No one really having a problem. And RTA trying to put out a commanding lead at the moment. Jan Grimmel keeping ahead of Herman. Chris Collison fighting to look for a place, and a little bit further back, Kirstein Peters trying to move forward as well. So as the little trains are building on, it's been clean. It's been great. It's been interesting.
Well, we can't say that too early, Stephen, as you said, it's very early into the race, but funny enough, it's not round 5, it's round 4, unfortunately. So meaning we are halfway into the distance, well, into our calendars, and it's, as you said, all to play for. But RTA going out and setting up a commanding lead, flying in formation in order to break any type of attack from the Stingers racing car of Gerrit Bucas. But you mentioned Chris Collison, great qualifying pace, but not able in any shape or form to fight his way up the pack. It's like that Lamborghini has got a bunch of sandbags on its rear wing. No drive, nothing on it, and just unable to get any form of attack. But take a look at these two BMWs, Rob van der Heever versus Johan VDV. The the Shell livery car there trying to take a flight.
You're not wrong, it did have Sheldon.
Driven. If I think Shell, I think Sheldon. I apologize. It's going to happen no matter what. But it's he's trying to fight there, but information flying in the back. We do see a Lexus popping out in front of Arne Kraus, hoping to get a move done there on the Lamborghini of
Stanton Augustus.
Stanton Augustus, the only other Stingers racing car out there others than the likes of Gerrit Bucas and Chris Collison. I do believe that Stanton is a bit more of a new driver towards the circuit, so he is trying to learn it. So, which more than likely going to attack that out there. But the Lexus is proving to be mighty in the corners compared to the mid-engine Lamborghini. Front engine proving to be more powerful compared to that Italian power. No fight able to come out of there. But in the front, we have Kirby Tron after a phenomenal start going after Brandon Holthuizen. And we did mention it, that all black livery, Stephen. Now, as a person, all my clothes normally, but also as my history as dancing and all of that, to train always in black colored clothing. But in dark racing, in night racing, a black livery can be seen as a bit of dangerous if there is parts of a circuit that isn't lit. Luckily, we do have that lighting around the circuit, but it is a brave choice. And hopefully, he is visible for the rest of the tracks.
Trying to be a little bit stealthy out there. Could be doing everything he can to hang on the back of him. Just behind, you got Johan, and whoa, looks like a big mistake coming in, and that was Brandon who went into the wall. And got it all shapes of wrong through the corner.
I see no damage. Wait, maybe on the right rear, left rear, perhaps a little bit of paint traded. Some bare metal being exposed, nothing on the left, on the right side, but I do see something on the left-hand side. If we get a shot from our camera crew, yeah, there we go. There's a bit of damage. So I do believe he might have been nicked and spun around and going in left rear first. So that's going to carry some suspension damage, and hopefully nothing damaged on the steering, well, not steering rack, on the drive shaft towards the back. There's the steering at the back there. But in other words, Stephen, we do not see the likes of Mahad Musa out on circuit. I do see his team has the car in pits, but unfortunately not out on circuit. Another big name we do not have the privilege of seeing racing out here tonight. But Brandon Oldenshausen has his hands full now, having to defend against the likes of Stanton Augustus of Stingers Racing. And right behind Stanton Augustus is, guess who? The mighty Lexus Ron Kleinans, hunting down still from the start, not yet able to get any form or pace out of that Lexus. And then, of course, our poor, sad American muscle. Love this car, but it is struggling to get any form of traction or even power towards the front of the pack. And that is not because of the driver. I just think that the Chevy is not so lekker anymore.
It needs a V8. It doesn't need a V6. But back out in front, Brandon Kruger and Blucknote running in tow. Two that have worked quite closely with each other and continue to talk to one another. We do find out, however, that Martin, they don't seem to be in the same radio waves with. So that does mean that Martin does have a good go. They're Perrott waiting his time, biding out where he can do as our top four have completely split from the grid and continue to move their way forward. The question that comes in is who is now managing fuel and tires? This circuit can be detrimental in terms of tires. Now, having a chat to a couple of drivers about it, it is the concern is the rears start to give up and the left front starts to eat away at its tire life. And the more that you go on the attack, the more that you're hovering in the slipstream, the more that you're taking that little bit of tire life out. So a lot of the drivers are going to be utilizing a bit of follow the leader tactics. Try and just keep in the tow, buy out the time. Remember, if you are in the tow, working on a slipstream, the first car is at 100% power. Second, so your first car is at 100% to 90%. Oh, as we do
Porsche spun.
That's Peters.
That's Kirsten Peters.
Oh man, completely off into the dirt. And now second last with Lucas Jabet playing a little bit of catch up in the Mercedes, trying to find out some time here. Good to see Lucas still keeping on going. But going back to what I was saying, if you are leading the train, you're at 100% to 90% on the throttle. Car behind you sits on 80 to 70. Car behind that is sitting from 70 to 60. And it goes down. The more that you run close to one another, the more that you can save a bit of fuel. It's something that you get to learn with the world of NASCAR and IndyCar that do it, but it does carry over to the likes of tin top racing. And this is where you start to plan out where you are. If you're not making that ground and you're not able to get the queue further up, rather get the queue all together and be the car sitting in the middle. Be the third car. You've got enough to get the power to get past, but you also got enough to save.
Wide.
Rob van der Heever and
running wide. No, Rob van der Heever, unfortunately, just going out and into not even the gravel trap. We can call them pretty much just stones, as we all have seen the stones out there at Qatar. They are absolute boulders and can damage the floor of these cars if the drivers are not careful. But that'll also count towards a bit of a track cut if the steering team senses he has gained any shape or form of time. Now, we mentioned about the draft, Stephen, and it is also important to note you can be a 8-long train of cars going back to back, and guess what, you can even be half throttle all the way at the back of the pack, but as long as you are following closely, you are still getting the same amount of speed, but less fuel is being used. But as we take a look at this, Ron Kleinans on the inside of Status Augustus and goes and makes the move. Kirby John having to struggle a bit with the likes of his Porsche, but he was up front earlier on and has dropped down, same as goes with Brandon Holtzhausen. Now, Brandon Holtzhausen earlier we saw going towards the wall, having carried a bit of damage on his left rear suspension now, just there, but Kirby John not able to carry enough speed, a bit slow actually. Question is, what is going on with this Porsche now? And also, this does not look like the new up-to-spec Porsche with not having the number board on the rear side. If you take a look at the Chevy or even the BMW in the Brazilian colors, there is a number board right next to the car number to indicate its position on the field. So I wonder if he has selected the right one or maybe even the wrong one. But I do believe the car shouldn't have any form of difference between them, but I do believe he might be carrying some damage as he is tumbling down the entire order and now has Arno Kraus as company, where previously he was up in the top 10.
Yeah, so to give a bit of information on that, because it's a fun fact actually, this is the 2024 early 2025 car that was scanned and put in. Then they've released the full set of 2025 rules where they brought in the new LCD number boards that are, well, positioning and pit boards. That's what it's there. It's for positioning and it's for pit. That got brought in the latter part of 2025. Fun fact, it also costs a fair chunk of money to actually have it. But there is no difference in performance between this car and its later count of the number board part. That's the only difference. It was an LCD board put in. Car was exactly the same spec and has continued to be BOP'd in the same spec. However, Arno Kraus has got damage on that front right. Take a look how he's getting into the corners and how much he's having to throw the car in to have the car understeer on the way out. Perfect to show is on the exit. Look how he sweeps across and battling to get the nose pointed right in. That little bit of damage to the nose has carried a lot through. You look at the likes of Kirsten Peters' car as a good one. Exact same Porsche. Watch the nose, easy to get in and out through the corners. Arno's got a bit of damage to that car. The problem is now he's going to have to, well, the Kirby's got a problem with that car. Now he's got to try and make it work. There's a big look on the inside of Ruan Kleinans. The Lexus gets the run, but now gets absolutely bottled in pace. So quick wave by saying, hey, listen, that was a bit of a look on the inside, but you now got to go as Arno Kraus from Team Tryhard is going to put the pressure on, and Kleinans is going to have to really consider the pace that's here. Good fights at the back at the moment. This is our closest fights out on the circuit between Kirby, Ruan, Arno, Kirstein, all fighting out with one another. Jan van der Venter having a good drive has opened up the gap, but however, the brawl behind him, if it stops, he's going to get brought into an absolute fight of note. Arno Kraus, only one out in the Chevy, having a good go. Kirsten Peters, the car can rotate quite a bit. It doesn't have the same top end from the new BOP, unfortunately, and on this circuit, with the temperature and due to the turbo nature of the car, it doesn't quite have the best run. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in mechanical grip to make it work out. Kirby now got a problem as Kleinans trying to run ahead, and now it's a Lexus ahead of Ruan Kleinans. A little bit of a discussion there. I'll hang on. We're going to see what works, but Kirby not going to wait out too much. They've caught up to Johan van Venter. Johan now gets a problem as Ruan looked on the inside. Kirby getting swallowed up by Arno Kraus around the outside. Johan having to fight back left, right, and center. Kleinans back onto the toe, and take a look. Kirby fighting with Arno Kraus, looking to join into the battle with Ruan Kleinans and Johan Venter, who now needs to try and figure out what he needs to do. Talk about sim stuff? Well, this is all about the racing stuff that comes with it. Ruan gets a run on the inside, and Kirby docks down, and now trying to put the pressure back on, and it's going to look to get nearly 3 wide into a corner as Peters is involved. A little bit of a scuffle between them, and Ruan Kleinans survived just after being, all I could say is mugged by the Porsches at the moment. But Kirstein, a driver that got a DNF. Kraus gets it out of shape, and it looks like quite a few. Stanton Augustus got it a little bit loose as well.
Heart in mouth moments there, Stephen, and is absolutely entertaining. Almost 4 wide into the corner there. And I do have to say, Kurbitron is having some issues with that car, not really having the drive on the straights, immediately dropping down as soon as he got a drive. I mean, he made a brilliant move at the previous lap on the likes of Kleinans, but now, unfortunately, has dropped down even more and more. Just has the better drive in the corners, but not enough on the straights. All his work getting undone there. But Christian Peters was up in the early 10s. Top 10, I believe, in the previous couple of laps. Still, they had their spin, and now he has his sights set on the likes of Ruan Kleinans on the inside, hard on the brakes. Who's bravest? Who's going to be able to keep it side by side in the final corner? Now it's a pure drag race. The Lexus being able to use its power on the straight and just say, oh, thank you for the send. You have been denied. You have to return to sender. The Lexus is not accepting any shipments as he pulls away there. But back in front, side by side, it is the black BMW of Holzhausen versus the shell-colored livery of Gerard VDV. Now, Holzhausen, having had a spin earlier in the race, is now fighting his way back. Glad to see he's back in the top 10 and has more fighting to do. But right behind him is Gerard van der Venter, not going to give up just yet. The Shell livery, and powered by Shell, I assume, is going to be fighting his way all the way there. But take a look, a lot of circuit cutting or corner cutting there going across. He has to be careful as he will be penalized if he puts all 4 wheels past that white line you can see there, which just defines the likes of the racing surface. But back in front, Jan Blichnet, Martin Jacobs, BMW versus Mercedes, German power fighting against one another. Both front end, one long with the cockpit a bit more towards the rear wheels, and the BMW a bit more centered, but still has a lot of grunt. With Brandon Kruger running away a bit there in the front, just doing his normal Brandon Kruger things. But back to the phenomenal fight on point. Was a 5-driver fight all the way just to get to P12 there, but now it's pretty much formation flying there. Drivers just trying to sort out what's going on, having to cool down the tires after a bunch of attacks there. But Kurbitron able to get past Ruan Kleinans, and Christian Peters also just able to hold position. But Ruan Kleinans, big snap, losing not 1, 2 positions, and has allowed Arne Kraus to get right onto, not Arne Kraus, Stanton Augustus to get right onto the rear wing of that mighty Lexus. But now Stanton Augustus, is he going to make the most of it, as the tires, I do believe, are going to have been overworked on Ruan Kleinans, and now needs to really go and cool them down and just hold formation. But he is not. He is getting a better drive out of the final corner to get close to the likes of Kirsten Peters, and Johan VDV also losing a position to Kurbitron. So another moment might have occurred and allowed the likes of Kurbitron to get past. Kurbitron leading the way, going defensive onto the inside, hoping to cover off any sort of attack from the cars behind him into turn 1. And Johan VDV goes a bit wide, have a bit of a snap, allows Kirsten Peters to get closer, as well as Ruan Kleinans. This is turning now from a 2-car to a 6-car fight, as these all are following one another around the circuit here at Tussauds International Raceway.
Well, taking a look over to the pit wall, we got Paul Venter going and cheering in from the sideline. We've got Craig Stones, Ruan Heineke, everyone. David Van Veek as well, going and cheering on from the sideline. So for drivers that weren't on the grid, well, they still managed to make sure to arrive, and well, the party is most certainly here, as we do see likes of Kirby open up the difference away from Johan VDV, a driver that unfortunately got a DNF in the last race. I think he's having the best race of his life right now, going and fighting it out against the Porsches and the Lexus and Stanton Augustus, but there is just a brawl everywhere you go. Further up through the field, Brandon Kruger and Jan Blichnout sort of running the tow at the moment, working with one another. They've opened up a gap to Martin Jacobs. Gerard Bucas holds on to 4th place with Herman Percival in a little bit of no man's land ahead of Chris Collison. Behind them, Neil Greening out in the Lamborghini. Rob van der Heever from the likes of the Griffin Sim Racing team holds on to 8th. Johan Grimmel holds on to 9th place. The top 10 is ending with Brandon Holthuizen away from Gerard van der Venter. A little bit further behind, Kubi Tarrant managing to pull away from the pack, and we did see Peters off. Peters off into the distance and dug into the sand. Now trying to get the car going. The Porsche snapping underneath him and now having to do everything they can to fight it out. Ruan Kleinen stands to Augustus Jan van der Venter. Now shaken one Porsche off. Now have to contend with one another. Further back, Arno Kraus getting ahead of Peters. Lucas Jabert will be rounding out the pack. Still going, still pushing, still having a bit of fun out there. Fastest lap time of the race is held by Blitznote at the moment with a 157.4. Well, the rest of the field that is sitting with the 157s are sitting with a 157.7, with only Brandon Kruger with 157.6 at the moment. We haven't even hit the 20-minute mark of this race. We're starting to see drama coming in, but drivers not backing down. Now, last time we saw this type of fighting, Cam, I'll take us back to Monza in Season 1, where we saw drivers running out of fuel because pushing way too hard, not quite having the pit stops in plan, and suddenly had the entirety of fun overlapping strategy. And that is where the impact hurts. And we also got to see it here at Qatar last season, where drivers ran into the same thing. Got into a fight, got into a good race, forgot to look at two fundamental parts of this car. It is virtual energy that you can't get across the line. You will land up being taken out of the race. You will get penalized first. You do it again, you're out. Done, dusted, game over, race out. Now, second to that is you've got your normal fuel as well. These drivers have been working to minor parts, and Stanton Augustus taking the long way around through the corner. Now has Arno Kraus joining him as well. But I go back to that because it's a factor that we need to consider, especially for the fight. It's a driver's championship. It is a hard-fought race. However, you've got to keep in mind that you get to play, you get to have a bit of fun, you will get to have a bit of hurt. As Gerard loses out to Kirby, Kirby's really gone and dialed up the wick, and getting ahead of Gerard van der Venter now has to deal with another van der Venter behind him. However, that has also brought the likes of Johan van der Venter into play as well, the teammate and brother, to get involved in the fight to chase down in this run. Ruan Kleinans is also following close by. You got Stanton Augustus, you got Arno Kraus. We got some good racing through the pack as Ruan looks on the inside, side-by-side moment between the two, a little bit of a touch, and Ruan backing off saying, listen, I caught you in the rear there, my bad, gets him going again. They do lose out to Stanton Augustus, but now Arno Kraus, now looking to take the dive, goes for the inside on Ruan Kleinans. The two of them know each other far too well from all the Vasetta Corsa Competizione, and in terms of being a gentleman out on track, well, you're now into a fight and lost the position. Another little fight gone in is Percival and Chris Collison, two that were sitting alone, now suddenly checking each other's mirrors and looking where the fight is going to come.
And absolutely, Stephen. And this little train that has formed, we saw earlier there, all that I keep on thinking about is just maybe the car in front, Thomas the Tank Engine, and just play the song We Like to Party, because it has been a massive fight there in the back as I see my co-commentator turning up the jams on his headset and just enjoying it. But Home Percival having to keep company the likes of Chris Collison. Chris Collison having an opportunity to fight for that top 5, which we haven't seen much this season with that Lamborghini finding its feet again. But Herman Percival, spoken to him earlier this year, and he said he wanted to switch cars with the McLaren getting absolutely hammered with the curbs, but it does seem that he has found a bit of pace with the McLaren being an absolute pleasure to drive now, to get everything fired up within it, all the way from brakes to the tires to its engine. But it's going to be quite a handful for him in order to get it across the line here, if he needs to continue defending against the likes of Stingers Racing Chris Collison.
Well, that's it. I mean, the drivers are going to really have to focus on what they're doing. Young VDV also fighting out with Ruan Kleinans, going and doing everything he can. And this is where the fighting comes to a very interesting situation. Rowan Kleinans and Johan van der Vente have squared up with each other on circuit once before with a league called Sarko. And Johan van der Vente actually comes from the world of console racing, Project Cars to... I can be correct on this one. Project Cars to Assetto Corsa Competizione was meant to race ACC when there was a 24-hour and actually put together a team for the 24-hour. He was unfortunately unable to race that. The team had Matthew Densham, Janneman Price, Philip van Zyl that were in the team. But he has also been now having a bit of fun out in the world of LMU and getting a bit of support from a friend out in the grandstand of Paul Venter that's versed him over those. Yeah, Rowan Kleinans has known him from Sarko. Arno Kraus likewise known him from that world as well. So it's good to see drivers that have crossed swords in the past getting to match up once again. But then you got like Martin Jacobs, Brandon Kruger and Bluchner. Martin Jacobs, a driver that arrived with a Cadillac, took the fight to the sharp end of the field against the Delta Negative team, getting picked up by the RTA team towards the latter part of it, saying, hey, look, this guy's got a bit of pace to him, and see how he goes. However, he's fighting against drivers that have gone for the championships. Brandon Kruger has gone for the ACC championships along with Jan Bluchnoot. The two of them now have worked very closely with one another for many, many years. Now having to have the young gun coming at them, and Martin is not going to be hanging around. Kruger and Jacobs have got the same driving style. Quite aggressive on the attacks, quite aggressive on the defenses. However, they've got to play the long game here. With 55 minutes to go, a pit stop that needs to be pulled into check as well, that all the drivers will need to think about during the course of this race. And no one at the moment, if we look at our stops, has gone into the pits. So right down from Bluchner, Kruger, Jacobs, Bucas, Collison, Percival, Greening, Rob van der Heever, Lotto Grimmel, Holtzhausen, Turan, Jan van Vente, and the likes. Yeah, you move all the way down, have not gone through the pits. And that changes how this race goes. It changes the complexion of it. Because, take this, Gerard van der Vente now fighting. Tyres are taking a hit, fuel's taking a hit. Stanton Augustus and Rowan Kleinans. Kleinans has been on a constant attack the whole time. Stanton Augustus waited for a little bit of time, then got back onto the charge. He's trying to make up time. I think drivers are going to be pushing towards the end of the race, towards the last 20 minutes if possible, to get those pit stops done and dusted, versus the earlier stops we've seen in the previous races. Oh, as we do see Stanton Augustus. Oh, and now Rowan Kleinans on the inside. Very, very close between the two of them. A quick flash of lights from Kleinans saying that was a little close. But Stanton Augustus, not deterred, stays on the fight for Gerard van der Vente, who at this point is just keeping an eye on his mirror. Stanton Augustus giving a little bit of a sorry to Rowan Kleinans between the two of them, but that just fouled up his drive on the exit.
Unfortunately not what he would have wanted, and back on the attack is Rowan Kleinans there, trying to get as much slipstream all the way from Stanton Augustus, not really able to make it 3 wide. Hello, who's going to be the bravest of the brakes? Out of the pits comes Christian Peters, and Rowan Kleinans using his years of experience to go for his switchback. Brilliant move, 2 places in 1 corner. What a move from Rowan Kleinans in the Lexus RCF.
And then you've got Arno Kraus taking a bit of Stanton Augustus's drive, who lost out that drive. Both of them got ready. They break that a little bit later. Well done on thinking just break that earlier, focus on the exit versus the entire drive going through, which is actually quite great. I do want to also point up a fun little fact about Neil Greening. For anyone that doesn't know Neil Greening, there's a website that is a South African website. It's a dating website, so much like your Tinder and your Grindr and that type of stuff. There's Flickfloy, which I think I got it right. He is the owner of that very website that has been trying to bring hearts and minds together for Valentine's Day. And Neil Greening at the moment has been the only driver that I know, and I feel bad to say this, is forever alone in 7th position.
Don't worry, Neil. I'll join you there soon. But that's a bit of a promotion, and also a segue to it. But what a way to state it. I mean, Steven, it's just his. Yeah, there is no better way to actually state it in any other shape or form. But he is doing quite well there in 7th position. Yeah, that's what he's playing on the team radio, all in his ears by the team. But take a look back here, Gerard van der Vente, having his mirrors filled with the Lamborghini of Stanton Augustus, and running wide is Johan VDV, not having the race he wanted, falling all the way backwards and having a bit of track extensions going on there in the background. But BMW taking a bit of a defensive line as the likes of Stanton Augustus just keeps his line, trying to figure out what is going on. But we have seen a lot of drivers just using the strategy of sitting behind the car in front in an attempt to find out where the weak points are, what do they exploit, where do they run wide, how can I attack them on the next lap if possible when I'm close enough. It's a strategy that many drivers use, and it's also quite a skill that is quite rare with many drivers out there, not on circuit but just out there in the world of sim racing. Always has the mindset on, listen, I want to go forward, I want to go fast, I want to go no matter what, and attacking and burning up the tires quite too early. So that's a skill that not many drivers know out there. But Brandon Kruger, these RTA drivers are just flying in formation, swapping around, leading one another aloud in order to gain some front leading time, but also, I believe, maybe fuel save a few times around there. But take a look, take a quick reference before I hand over the mic to you, Steve. Is Paul the Wall saying that Neil Screening needs a subscription to his own site?
That's it.
I don't think that's going to find him a racing buddy, though.
What a way to say it to a sponsor. Look, I got to give it up to RTA, a reasonably new team to the field. I mean, this is a team that's younger than Stingers. It's younger than quite a few teams that have gone in through the world of sim racing here in South Africa, but have come out with a bit of a bang with the likes of, and I stand to be corrected on this one, we had David van Wyk, with the Van Wyk family being part of it, and Yuppie Simons was the original ideas, putting this team together as an esports team to show what they can do in the world of sim racing. And they've really gone for that dominating effort in making sure they've got top-end drivers to do it. However, they've also playing the ball of, guys, you racing, you fighting it out and moving forward. Okay, so I am getting a bit of information here that it's an old iRacing team that's new to LMU. I don't think, yes, it's old to iRacing, but not as old as Team Tryhard, which is actually Arno Kraus is part of Team Tryhard. If I remember
Team Tryhard has been around for quite some time.
If I remember
they've been on ACC.
The iRacing team started after, I think it was 2021, 2022's time. But we do have new teams signing new drivers to push one another forward, and especially coming into this world of sim racing in LMU, looking to fight it out and see what they can do. And this is what I like to see, the difference in drivers, people pushing that a little bit more, trying to see where they can go and where exactly the strengths and weaknesses of one another and how they fight it out. So this is where I'm wondering what's going to be the game plan. A driver championship between each of them. We know that Gerard Bukes at the moment, who's got the gap over Chris Colson, who's dealing with Herman Percival, the two of them are going to be talking with one another, and the teams will be taking note that the only driver that has done a pit stop thus far is actually Peters, which Kirsten Peters sitting in 18th position. You can see the likes of Jan van der Vente right onto the tail of Kirsten Peters. But consider the pit stop coming into play. The driver's going to have to keep that well enough in mind of how much fuel they're burning off and where the marker is. For Peters, is that marker? What happens when you need to get some work done to the car and you need to get yourself sorted out with fuel and tires. There's where the car sits. Where is everyone else going to follow out in it? Stanton Augustus, Gerald VDV, they are continuing to fight with one another, with Jan VDV just keeping them on the coattails, looking around, trying to suss out where the competition is. As a mainstay team, they will be casting their eyes to the back, seeing what exactly is happening. It's something you don't want to forget about. There's a driver that got into the pits. Why? What's the reasoning that you dived into the pits? Is it because you needed repair? Is it because you're going for fuel and tires? Are you trying a different strategy? This is something we've seen in racing. Griffin Sim Racing team has been synonymous for going and doing earlier pit stops and pulling out towards the front. Something that drivers have done previously. And that's where we've seen championships go and move forward.
It's a lot of questions that is always on the mind of a race car driver, no matter what. Especially if you're alone, you don't have a team on the pit wall that's able to keep an eye on any of the drivers going into the pits. And you have to go into a race with a bit of, how can one say, research done on the circuit. That also, but having to know what works the best. Is it the overcut or the undercut that is going to work the best for you on the circuit? Because these drivers have run multiple solo test sessions, one can say, in an attempt to understand what the car's going to do on live fuel load, what the tire's going to be, as well as if you have the range of different cars within a team, such as RTA, with having a BMW, Mercedes, and a Lamborghini, you are able to see what your competitors do. Yes, they are your teammates, but you are also able to get an upper hand over your teammates and any fellow competitors that might pose a threat towards your championship. So it is going to be quite interesting to see how the drivers are going to be able to do it. But these RTA drivers are just going on and following one another, playing follow the leader, not allowing any chance of attack for Stingers Racing's Harald Beerkes. They just circulating there all the way in the background with his lights just popping up every now and then there as they go around the corner. So RTA has set their sights on what they want to do. The question is, are they going to be team orders when it comes to the final few minutes of this race? I hope we don't see any team orders, but also some good clean racing. And now back to Steve.
I'm gonna kind of raise you on the stakes there. Jan VDV, unfortunately, a DNF that's just popped up. So Jan, unfortunately, out of the race, was having a race of his life, and now out of the race and is done and dusted. Blichno trying to defend the inside line and having Brandon Kruger looking around the outside. This is where I've got a funny little inkling where a fight is going to turn a little bit sour. And that is because, remember the championship. Martin Jacobs leads, Blichnout second. Kruger is in 6th place. Kruger at this point, any point scoring into first is going to help him out, but push his teammates into Beerkes' clutches, or push the two to fight it out. You're looking at 11 points shy between Martin Jacobs and Blichnout, sitting with 94 versus 83. Kruger is the linchpin here. The question also comes in, take a look who's sitting in 4th and can just keep an eye on the fight. It is sad to hear that Jan unfortunately had closed the garage after having a tremendous fight earlier, as we do see likes of Jan Grimel losing out to Kleinans, opened up the inside, and that was pretty much all she wrote. But don't count out the fight for the top 4. There is a bit of a gap, but those 3 starting to get a little bit feisty with one another. May actually start to bring Beerkes back into play. And don't forget, Chris Carlson and Percival, they've been fighting to a point. They've also been trying to run in tow with one another, swapping out, saving fuel, and trying to draw the field back in. If you can work with with your competition, start identifying, hey guys, let's work with each other just for a little bit, try and open up the gap again, or try and close the gap amongst drivers, it is a good show. This is where things come in. Unfortunately, Jan VDV out of the race, and something running adrift there hopefully we'll try and find out what has gone on. Maybe, possibly, getting to chat to him, here in the commentary box and find out what exactly went on with the car that forced it a retirement during the course of this race. We do know that one is they found mechanical failure. They found a bit of a turn. They turned off the power on it, and that was pretty much it, out of the running. But I wonder what's gone and caused another DNF for Johan van der Vente, who was actually running a little bit further up. And last time we saw him was behind Kirsten Peters, who's up into 16th now after having a bit of a go. Remember, Kirsten Peters was behind the rest of the field and was waiting to go out on the circuit. Now we take a look at who's pitted. We've got the likes of Peters, who has pitted. Joubert is ahead.
Rest of the field still needs to pit. I'm curious here, Stephen. I'm also quite curious here, but can I make a quick confession here? Oh, had a bit of a disconnect there from Brandon. Brandon
is a teammate of Jan van der Vente. If I remember, is the one that says Brandon that's a teammate is Brandon Hills, who is the son of Peter Hills that races in Formula V, and they've worked with each other from sim racing as well. So I know that there is a bit of a communication between the Hills family and the Van der Vente families. I've got a sneaky suspicion that the Brandon is Brandon Hills, and unfortunately a disconnect is a bit of a bugger to find out, and that unfortunately does round out as mechanical. But that means that Jan van der Vente, if you look at it, he's so far been running, he's yet to finish a race.
Oh, no, wait, there we go. Toki, there we go. Jan VDV saying he hit the pit wall into while grabbing a slice of pizza. And that, kids, is why you do not eat food and drive. That's
we
a bit of a funny one.
We tried coming up with a solution and, giving a viable reason of why things go. Just take it. Just take it. That's all I can admit.
Well, that it's brave of him to say that, because I mean, how many of us have gone and tried to reach for the cool drink while we are all in the simulator? And sometimes you just get you don't see the car in front of you, you don't see the very solid object that's right in front of you. But back to my confession, Steve, and I'm going to make you laugh again. Chris Collison. Now, ever since I started, other than being in the pits, ever since I started watching his racing and talking about it, every time I have said his name, I have to make sure that I say his surname right. Because a few times I read his surname as Collision.
I started calling him Collision. I will admit, I started calling him Collision in the early days of ACC. And 9 times out of 10, he was part of that collision. Brandon Kruger pulling into the pits, and take a look at the nose of that Lamborghini. That is not a happy Lambo. Got and squared up. And the only car that he was around was Martin Jacobs that was there. Has Martin got a bit of damage to the rear of his car? Because Brandon Kruger definitely getting some repair work to his after rubbing noses. Pit stops are starting to happen. 38 minutes in the race to go. Johan Blokno leads ahead of Martin Jacobs here, because Brandon Kruger, who's now in the box, will lose out time as Herman Percival comes by. Neil Greening will be chasing down. Rob van der Heever down in 7th. Rowan Kleinans, Jan Grimau, Stanton Augustus, Arno Kraus, Gerald van der Vente out on track to keep the Van der Vente name ahead of the pack. Chris Collison, Lucas Joubert, Kirsten Peters making up some headway, fighting. Remember, Peters is a lap down, but is slowly but surely bringing the field back into contention here. Is ahead of Brandon Holtzhausen and Kirby Turon. That rounds out the pack that is still going. The only retirement being Jan van der Vente, who... Cue the pizza signs. That's all I can say. The Italian signs. on that one. But it's interesting
Italian
enough.
car.
Brandon Kruger still hasn't repaired the damage to his nose.
Might not have been as significant as needed, but I mean, we can only speculate from the commentary box, Stephen. We can only say what we think. Of course, the driver will know more and will be experiencing a lot more out of that car compared to what we can see. We can only assume a certain amount of stuff, well, what's going on with the car. Otherwise, yes, what's the point of being commentators if you know everything about the car? But Brandon Kruger is a driver that we have known quite well to be able to still drive a car even with damage, even though it might have a significant impact on the results. But he might be able to pull that Raging Bull back into raging mode, as he might be playing smart here and fighting his way back up the pack.
But remember, Mon Jacobs now has an attack on Blicknote. This is the concern for Blicknote and for the likes of Kruger. The fight is on for the RTA team for driver number 1. Brandon Kruger at the moment, who's come out of the pits, just took fuel. This seems to be a full tire, not taking tire strategy that's come into play. He was not in the pits long enough to go and have an easy run. Now Ruan Kleinans is keeping him busy. Kleinans looks on the attack. Ooh, had to brake a little bit and take a dive to the left-hand side, not to rear in the back of that Lamborghini. But was keeping Kruger well enough at bay here to get going. The question that comes in my mind right now is Brandon Kruger has taken the undercut on everyone else. Is that going to work out? And is traffic going to play into his hand? Lucas Joubert into the box, getting some work done to the car, waiting to be out on circuit and looking for a bit of fun. I am seeing another retirement coming in, and that is in Quibby Turon. Unfortunately, in pit lane and not out on circuit. So is Brandon Holthuizen out of the race as well. So we're starting to see who has got enough to stay in the race. Holthuizen out, Turon out, and Johan van der Vente out of this race. They're not going to be seeing it through to the end, unfortunately. The garages are open, but it seems like whatever's gone on is a bit of carnage, as Kirsten Pila's going and allowing Jan VDV to, Gerald van der Vente to get on by, and Gerard now needing to just see where to go and take a look between the two. Ooh, a little bit of elbow to elbow contact between the two of them, and I wonder,
yikes,
if the two of them are trying to pull each other along.
No. Wait, Steve, quickly look at the gap there. VDV in 11th, and Peters is in 14th.
It's unlapping, but you can pull each other. You can pull each other forward.
But also this BMW, look at that front left has some damage on it from what I can see. Is this another?
That was
yeah.
Can
Can this be a BMW? Interesting. So, I'll take a look at this BMW versus Mercedes RTA fighting it out again. These two are not making it easy on one another. I wonder. Oh, a bit of a loose snap there from Martin Jacobs on curb exit as the car got a bit loose underneath them. But Jan Blicknote now. These two are fighting it out for the championship.
Now, this is going to be an interesting one for the Drivers' Championship.
Did Kruger say, listen, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to be pulled into the principal office and having to smash the door shut like Kevin Magnussen did to Gunther Steiner's door. But I wonder, but I don't think that might be the case. I just wonder if that's a bit of a different strategy in order to circumvent these two that are busy fighting it out in the front.
That's what I'm leaning to. I'm leaning to Brandon Kruger is aiming for the undercut to work out in his favor, but he's also very close to Ryan Kleinans on the way through. But don't count out who's sitting in third. Bucas, Percival in fourth, Neil Greening in fifth, with Kruger sitting in sixth place. There is an interesting play here between Bucas, Percival, and Greening, who can run a little bit of a longer throw through one another, as the field have opened up between each other, but Kleinans is still hanging on the back of Kruger, making sure that he's not going to lose too much time. with 32 minutes to go, there is not enough time to go and get your tires sorted, fuel sorted, and head back out on the track. So these drivers have now limited their stops to just getting fuel on board and get back out. And that also doesn't take into consideration of who has taken the impact on track limits as well. And that is where we have seen drivers like Vietia Buerta. And we've seen that in a couple of races with him. Unfortunately, it is pain after pain after pain that starts to creep in. You do get a warning, but you can go through those warnings and land up in a bit of a problem. Evan Percival into the pits, getting his pit stop done and dusted. Kruger moves up, Kleinans moves up. Neil Greening is going to be the next one up the road. So Kruger's undercut strategy works on having clear road ahead throughout. But depending on how the drivers make their way through and who's going to be able to take the charge up towards the top is going to be the better part of it. I've got a sneaky suspicion here. Kruger is trying to undercut the rest of the field, but he's banking on having clear air through the race. He's banking on Blichnout and Jacobs to follow each other into the pits, Bukers to go and follow through, as we do see Herman coming out of the pits and Kirby, who was a stopped car, back out onto the circuit, now back into the box. This is a car that was parked in the garage, is now back up on the jacks and getting checked out. So good to see Kirby getting the car back out onto the circuit, and now hopefully whatever is wrong with the car, they can get it back up and going. Unfortunately, Holzhausen still waiting in pit lane, doing a bit of work onto the vehicle. Kruger's running a gambit here that the rest of the field are going to follow each other through. If there's a fight, for whatever reason, I think we got a bit of a situation.
I was about to mention that, Stephen, because it is quite interesting. Niels Greening, 40-second gap between himself and his teammate in third position. That is the only other car that's, as I say, that I was about to say, is the only car between Brandon Kruger and his teammates in order to have clean air, as Brandon Kruger was able to pretty much just attack a lot more. But now, this opens up the likes for Brandon Kruger. He has clean air in front of him. He has nobody in order to take that clean air off of his front nose. As we see the likes of Gerrit Bierkes needing to make some moves past Rob Verheerfer. So now it brings into question, how fast can Kruger close that gap towards Bierkes, Jacobs and Blichnout, as Niels Greening is now pretty much tumbling down the tower, the timing tower. Apologies, I'm getting a bit of a hiccups here from my side, but Greening is now tumbling down, coming to come out right in front of Stanton Augustus. Now Stanton Augustus has fought his way up into the top team, that's going to drop down now because of his pit stop, as the likes of other cars are going to start passing them now. But
Neil Greening leaving, and there's Chris Colson that's going to catch him on the exit.
And Ron Kleinans and Johan Gemau have also just still need to complete their pits, I believe. So this is not all about strategy. Brandon Kruger pulled that trigger of boxing early. Our two leaders, Blichnout, Jacobs, into the pits. Have they stayed out too long and used their tires too much, and will they come out in traffic? That's a question now next. Will Bierkes, as I'm about to say it, Bierkes into the pits? This opens up the opportunity for Kruger to go full on guns blazing, saying, pedal to the metal, don't you dare lift, push to the end. You have 28 minutes left of the race. Use your undercut to your strategy and see how far you can go. He might get lucky and come out in front of his two teammates and competitors, as well as throw a hammer into the spanner works there for his two, as we see Jan Blichnout first off the jacks, first rolling, and Martin Jacobs still stationary, only leaving his pit box now. Where is Brandon Kruger entire thing? 9 seconds, 8 seconds back. He is coming out of the final corner. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He is going to jump both of his teammates. No, not.
He's 2 seconds behind them, as we do see a car there, but his tires are more up to temperature compared to his teammates, able to put down a bit more pace, carry a lot more speed to that first corner, as well as a second part of that complex, as that gap keeps on dropping down and going to be under 1 second by the time I believe they come across the main straight.
Here is the likes of Mon Jacobs looking in the rearview mirror, seeing Brandon Kruger on the back of him. Herb Lucas down into 4th ahead of Johan Gamal, who's pulled into the pits, along with Johan Kleinans, Chris Collison, Neil Greening, Herman Percival, along with Rob van der Heerde. Rounding out the top 10, Stanton Augustus, Gerald van der Vente, Arno Kraus, Kirsten Peters, along with Lucas Jabir and Kubi Turan, going and rounding out the pack. Unfortunately, 2 retirements, Brandon Holthuizen, Jan van der Vente, out of this race, looking to try and keep each other all together. But the fight for second in the final 26 minutes is on between the 2 RTA drivers. One, the Lamborghini, and Brandon Kruger, who is still sporting a little bit of damage and might have been a little bit of love coming from Jacobs on the tail end of his car to give that nose a bit of a 1-2 over. Now needs to try and figure out what he can do. These two are looking to brawl it out. Bluchnote, who is currently looking to get a race win, which will jump him up into 1st place of the championship. If Kruger gets ahead of the likes of Jacobs, that does tumble his points away from one another as well. And I do think we're going to see more and more of that starting to come into play, as drivers will be looking to push that a little bit harder, see where they can go and how far they're willing to move through the order. Johan Gamal, along with the likes of Rob van der Heerde, the Griffin Sim Racing team, going after likes of Johan Gamal at the moment, the new driver to the field this season, going and showing off what he can do to stick within the top 10 and just keeping the momentum through on the way. So it's good to see the drivers out there. Kirby out in 16th position. Brandon Holtz has an unfortunate retirement, so Kirby is the last of the drivers, with the likes of Lucas just ahead. Peters, who was the first pit stop we saw during the course of this race, now trying to tail on the back of Arno Kraus. Gerald van der Vente trying to catch up to Stanton Augustus in 11th position. So we are seeing drivers trying to push out a little bit more, but Herman Percival now catching up to Neil Greening. These two have not crossed swords through the race since the start, when everything got to splay out. Herman had Chris Collison, now having to deal with the Lamborghini of Neil Greening up ahead of him, and seeing how it goes. The former OG driver from Omnius Gaming now taking on Neil Greening. Mr. Flickfoyer himself trying to move in through the top 6. This is going to be an interesting fight, because Herman knows how to put the pressure on. The question, can Greening go and see how this fight is going to move forward? Who's going to be able to stand up at the top? At the moment, Greening is slowing things down on the apex, trying to hold back Herman at the moment. This is also where possible use of a spotter can come in for a bit of assistance to try and track the drivers around you. And that is where the team aspects start to come into play. Herman at the moment, who hasn't got his teammates on circuit, took the inside and gets that pass done and dusted. Neil, who tried closing the door, didn't quite work. A little bit of movement from Herman, saying a bit of a thank you there. A wiggle waggle of, hey, thank you, not for turning in on me. But now needs to open up the gap. And Greening, who was slowing it up through the corners, now tumbling a little bit further down, and will be in the clutches of Ron Kleinans in a very, very short time. With 23 minutes to go, we still got battles up and down through the circuit, with uncertainty on who is going to finish where. At the moment, Bluffnote has got a 4-second gap. He's cleared past Arno Kraus, but he leaves his 2 teammates to fight it out with one another, and Arno Kraus having to tackle the likes of Jacobs and Kruger.
Yes, Steven, I was about to say Mr. Flickfoyer finally found himself a partner, a tango buddy, but unfortunately, Herman Percival says, I'm not here to tango, I'm here to cha-cha, and he cha-cha'd his way all the way past likes of Neil Greening. But Martin Jacobs, Brandon Kruger, 2 teammates who were pretty much working together with the likes of our Bluffnote, has unfortunately now have a bit of a gap between the Bluffnote and the 2 of them. Question is, did Martin Jacobs stay longer into the box in an attempt to fix the damage on the car, or is this just natural working out? However, it is a lot of questions that's hanging out in the air. What's going to happen between these two of them? Are they able to work together to hunt down their teammate and minimize the damage, or what's the plan of action?
I think at this point it's just biding the time and waiting. To be honest, it's you can go for the fight, you can try and move forward. The question is, how much are you willing to put on the line? This early into, well, halfway through the championship, you got to start looking at pulling the trigger at some point of moving forward. Remember, the likes of Blacknote is towards a defending champion, where his two teammates are having to try and pull their way up through the ranks. I do think we're in for a rather exciting time to see these two brawl it out, and to go back to Paul Ricard, where we saw exactly that happening, especially when they got into the mix of the back markers and wanting to try and all clear through the corner at the same time, landed up with drivers pushing a little too hard and not able to get an easier run. That is my takeaway from it, and I do think we're in for that interesting little brawl.
Well, I just hope to not have the race needing to be resolved within the stewarding office, as that is not something that we don't like to see. We like to see the battle settled out there on track in order to give us some entertainment, as Honor Cross rather says, I'm getting out of the way. I do not want to get involved in this little skirmish. Let these two go and have some fun. But Honor Cross jumping out of the way in an attempt to avoid getting any conflicting drama his direction there. But let's take a look at Rafa and Stanton Augustus. Over a 1.5 second gap. These two have been trading some blows up and down the entire race there, but Stanton Augustus having shown some pace, hoping to claim a little bit of top 10 glory for himself, but also for the likes of Rob Heffer. Back to our closest fight on circuit, Martin Jacobs, Brandon Kruger. I do start to believe that Martin Jacobs has fired up those tires to be functioning into the window that he wants, and is pushing them harder and harder as the gap between two of them is slowly but surely starting to get longer. But Brandon Kruger not able to respond just yet, as I don't think he went and changed his tires. But I also think Martin Jacobs did, compared to the gap between the two of them. But you never know with Martin Jacobs just able to extend. But it does seem that Lamborghini using that slipstream in an attempt to get below the half a second gap between the two of them, and as they go into the first corner. It's interesting strategy-wise, as we do see a car off circuit there. That is Kirby Chon. Great to see him back on circuit, but that is taking some extensive moves. Well, no, some very, very exaggerated moves. He's not getting involved there, and unfortunately will penalize himself by giving himself an off track, but he did not gain any time, so I don't think the stewards will give him any sort of warning in order for him running out of the way for these two cars fighting for P2. But take a look at that gap, Steven, between Jacobs and Blichnet on our little timing tower on the side. Below 4 seconds. That is the lowest I've seen it ever since I started exiting the pits. Yes, these two are fighting it out. However, they are also closing the gap on the likes of Blichnet. Now, I don't know if Blichnet is catching up to some traffic, but I wonder if the BMW is starting to fail on its tires.
Take a look with the last lap time. Kruger trying to get a little bit quicker and closing up by 0.1 of a second to the like of Martin Jacobs. They are running very, very close to one another, trying to push that a little bit harder. And also, you got Rob van der Heeven, Stanton Augustus, from Sim Racing versus Stingers Racing, to fight it out with one another. These are the fights that are going on at the moment. Everyone's a little bit in open air to drive it as they go, with unfortunately Jan Gimmel going and getting in towards the pit. Something has gone on with Jan Gimmel's car, and he is tumbling down. So another possible disconnect coming into play for Jan Gimmel. Unfortunately, the BMW driver going to be losing out a little bit of time. Rob van der Heeven on a solid defense to try and hold back Stanton Augustus. The Griffin Sim Racing team have been practicing their holding back the competition, and Stanton Augustus saying, nope, it's mine, goes for the pass on the inside, clears on by, and Rob try to come back at him at a rate of knots. Unfortunately, unable to get that dive, unable to get a clearance as yet. These two focusing on their run for the top 10 and to see who's going to end up 9th and 10th. Real fair driving, both drivers giving each other enough room and enough respect to keep it going. However, it does look like Rob pushing it a little bit harder, and you see the understeer creeping in, where the Lambos will suffer with more oversteer versus the understeer side. This is where it starts to get into the last little bit of racing. We're into the last 16 minutes and 48 seconds of round 4 of our LMU Championship right here on RaceFace.Pro, proudly sponsored by EG Evolved. And the drivers really dialing it up at the wick at the moment. I do know a couple of drivers have been upgrading their gear. They've gone to EG Evolved, not only getting Moser, but they've also got themselves Sim Magic. And we have been informed by EG Evolved that there's a little bit more coming in. Acetic will be coming into the world of South Africa in terms of sim racing hardware that we're able to get our hands onto. I'm really interested to see how that is going to come into play. Now, no, drivers are really looking forward to it. If you're looking to upgrade today, head over to EG Evolved and let them know you're coming from RaceFace. They'll organize you with a very, very good deal, whether you're just starting out, looking to upgrade, or if you're a big fan of flight gear, they've got you covered. But back onto our racing at hand. I'm taking a look, Johan, unfortunately, into pit lane, and he was a driver that was originally out with a possible disconnect, now doing his exiting the pits, trying to get back out on circuit. Good to see, after running into a bit of a problem, not giving up the ghost. I've got to give it up to the drivers out there that have continued to fight it out, to continue driving and to continue on the race. Always go back to the motto: if you see the green, you got to see the checkered. You don't know where the points are going to fall and how it's going to favor with you. And if you think about it at the moment, Kirby, Tehran, along with Johan Gunnau, Lucas Jabé, Kirsten Peters, Gerard van der Vente, Arno Kraus, Rob van der Heever, Stanton Augustus, Rian Kleinans, Neil Greening, Herman Percival, Chris Carlson, Kerry Bucas, Brandon Kruger, Martin Jacobsen, Jan Blichnout, all look for an opportunity to move up through the championship for season 4. And all they needed to do is keep in with the race, see the green, see the checkered, score the points, walk away, going and climbing through the ranks, where it all comes down to stamina. Who can push that little bit more, and who has got nutrition to finish up not only just the race, but with the championship as well.
No, absolutely, Stephen, and it's something that it's spoken about. See the green, see the checkered, and almost a chicken day, checkered. It's always great to see the drivers, even if you're laps down. It's great to see you going around circuit and still completing your race. You never know what might happen at the end of the season. It might be 2 points separating you from your closest rival, and it might be this one race that can be the difference between those, well, for those 2 points, for you getting that 13th or even your 14th point. So we will see how it goes, but it's always great to see drivers continuing out there. So if any of the drivers are out there in the virtual grandstand, just listening in for the time and having parked the car, tell your team, get the car started, fuel it up, turn on that motor and get it back on a circuit so we can see you completing this race. But take a look here. Mining out the way is you bad there, Lucas, you bad, but 2 seconds, 2 seconds up the road. We can see it there in that little camera shot, as well as here. Johan Blichnout, 4 seconds to 2.3. Brandon Kruger, Martin Jacobs, these two have been pushing themselves in order to close up to the likes of Blichnout, and Blichnout not really able to extract more pace out of that BMW. And the question is it a problem with the BMW? Is it just not pace within that BMW? Or is it just formation flying to give us some entertainment at the very end? Honestly, I don't want formation flying. I want to see you fight it out all the way to the very, very end. So Carl Westhuizen, David David van Wyk, if you are in the virtual grandstand, get on the comms to these guys, tell them push, push, push. We want to see some great edge of seat entertainment. Well, we're gonna see it anyway, but we want to see it going on till the very, very end, and drivers giving it their all.
Some great racing starting to build up. Stanton Augustus, Rob van der Heever once again going and keeping close to one another. Now I expect a little fight coming on to here. Neil Greening and Rowan Kleinans keeping each other close for company as well. As we get into the later part of the races, the drivers are starting to feel that little bit of strain. The only drivers that have got a bit of fresh air is Blichnote, who leads the race by 2 seconds. It's not a lot, but he is 2 seconds ahead. Claire Bucas, Chris Carlson, Herman Percival are running with a bit of room between one another. But the fight is starting to build. And right behind these fighting duo of Augustus and Rob van der Heever is our leader, Blichnote, Jacobsen, Kruger, starting to close up the distance. They're going to get involved in this fight. And let's go take you back to round 2, where our leaders started going and fighting with one another, closed up to another little duel, such as Augustus and Rob van der Heever at this point. We saw it change the entire complexity of the race. Who walked away with the victory and who landed up losing a lot of time. Blichnote, if we go back in it, fell right the way down through the order on round 2 due to the little fight that was in front of him. So don't count it out. Neil Greening and Rowan Kleinans, both of them starting to do the tango, and Kleinans chasing down at a rate of knots at Stanton. As Neil Greening loses it into the dirt, he's able to save the car, but now is tremendously down on pace. Rowan Kleinans right onto the back of him with that brute force Lexus V8, chasing down the mighty V10 of the Lamborghini Huracan Evo 2 out on circuit, and it's all guns ablaze. Greening now punching a hole in the air, has Rowan Kleinans coming back at him at a rate of knots. Look towards the inside a little bit. You can see just keeping so close, waiting his option. There he is. Takes a dive on the inside. Try to compress the line. Unfortunately, no room to get on by just as yet, but he is going to try for a little bit of a cutback. Unfortunately, loses time out of turn 1. And that has given Neil Greening a little bit more breathing room to move forward. And I think for the Flick Floyd driver, now from the Logistical Nightmare Racing, he is desperately hanging on for an option here. Stanton Augustus and Rob van der Heever continue on their drive, trying to push a little bit further up the road and seeing where exactly these two will land up fighting it out. As 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th are fighting in their own duo battles, Blichnote keeps ahead, and he has got Brandon Kruger and Martin Jacobs, who are keeping each other company big time. Martin losing out to Kruger. Now the gap's starting to sort of open up, but with 9 minutes to go, drivers pushing it to the absolute limit. It's now or never to get the passes done. Remember, they are doing 2 minutes to 2 minute ones now around the circuit, and everyone's starting to feel the pressure. Take a look at the most gains and losses, Cameron, and the most gains has to go to Joubert. The likes of Joubert up 4 positions from starting stone cold at the back of the field, has just consistently picked up the climb, kept going, kept going, kept going. Unfortunately for Peters, it was a tumble down the order, and the likes of Tehran, unfortunately, landing up the most in it, 9 positions down.
It just shows though, Stephen, that even though you might not have the greatest qualifying pace or even a race pace, sticking out and consistency will reward you with a good handful of points here. Let's take a look again at a repeat of the previous lap down the main straight. This time, Rowan Kleinans pulls out on the inside a bit earlier. He makes it. Is he going to carry too much speed? Niels Greening looking for the switchback. Mr. Flick Floyd not able to get any move back onto the likes of Rowan Kleinans. And Rowan Kleinans says, thank you very much. Thank you for that tango. I am going to drive out of the life with the Acurus Lexus RCF now. Now he sets his sights onto the likes of Herman Percival, who is 19 seconds up the road, and now needs to hopefully get close within the last remaining 8 minutes of this race going on. Yeah, but take a look. Stanton Augustus, Rob van der Heever into turn 1. Rob van der Heever not having enough pace to close onto the rear wing of Stingers Racing, car number 46 of Augustus there, but they have to be mindful, specifically Rob van der Heever. Stanton might not see them as much, but van der Heever in his rear view mirrors will be seeing our leaders closing up on him in a rate of knots, with Johan Blichnote leading the way, and then
maybe picking up a bit of pace. I think he might have picked up a bit of pace there. The gap already up to 4 seconds, but we did not see this, Steven. The switch between second and third. Kruger and Jacobs, both of them have made a switch. I believe Brandon able to use his tires to a better of advantage, and McLaren and Mercedes not able to have any grunt to fight off the Lamborghini there. So now it is Kruger setting his sights onto Blichnote's 4-second gap. Is he able to pull a bit more and able to get a bit more out of it? We will have to see. But it is going to be quite an interesting one in order to see what is going on there.
It's definitely a fight till the end, and we'll have to see what the drivers can do to push it that little bit more, especially into the closing stages of this race. Second place on the cards here, Kruger and Jacobs. For Jacobs, this is a worst case scenario for him. Unfortunately, if Kruger finishes ahead, his fight with Blichnote suddenly gets a whole lot harder to be able to fight for first in the championship. Kruger and Jacobs will continue the fight with one another right until the bitter end, and they are starting to catch up. A little bit of room, because here's Blichnote trying to catch up to Stanton Augustus and Rob van der Heever, who are also within a fight with one another. 6 minutes to go. It means we're in for a race till the very, very end. And who is going to be able to pull their way through to the sharp end of the field? Who is going to stand above all? Who is going to have an easy time out here? And who is going to fight it out? Because Blichnote is going to lose time. And so all of a sudden, the two that he kept away by nearly 4 seconds will start to close the distance. For Blichnote, if he cannot clear Rob van der Heever and Stanton Augustus in the next couple of seconds, he's suddenly going to be joining into the fight that is raging behind him. Kruger opened up the distance to Martin Jacobs, but if the pass can't happen, well, it's about to become a worst case scenario. Quick flash of lights from Blichnote, but it's Rob who is focusing on what he needs to do to try and catch up to the Lamborghini ahead of him. He continues to put the chase on. Once again, lights flashing. A big look on the inside.
Shoved him a bit wide there, Jan Blichnote, making a bit of a move in order to force the likes of Rob Heever to go wide and deep into the corner there. That's a bit of something that might not be happy, because remember, yes, there's blue flags, but there is no rule set. We do not follow F1 rules saying you have to mind out the way after a certain amount of corners. You can facilitate it, but you also have to keep in mind that drivers will be fighting their own battles. But we now have to take a look. Gerrit van der Heever and Kirsten Peters. This is our other closest battle on circuit here. Peters in the Porsche. Iron Dave's livery goes on the inside of Gerrit van der Heever. A brilliant move, having tumbled down the likes of, well, tumbling down the field in the earlier parts of our race here. Now fighting his way back up into 12. Not maybe getting lucky and getting into the 10th position, but I do not think with 4 minutes left to go. But take a look back here. Harry Birkus and Chris Collison getting stuck between these two, fighting his way back. He is currently running a race of his own, not able to gain any more positions. At 5 seconds up the road is Herman Percival in the McLaren 720S Evo, so not really able to get any more drive out of this race here, but he still has another car there. But Stanton Augustus stuck between, and Rob van der Heever stuck between our leader and second place. This did not play into the hands of Kruger, as Kruger wished that these two would have made it a bit difficult for Blichnote to get past it. But now he's also going to be asking, listen here, I need you guys to help me now get past you guys as fast as possible. We do know that Duchel is a very, very tight circuit. It's as twisty as bendies. It makes it difficult for one to get past one another. But luckily, Rob van der Heever minds out the way of Brandon Kruger and says, I'm rather not going to get another knock on the rear wing. My race, unfortunately, with the likes of Stanton Augustus is already over from focusing on my race there, and now led through the likes of Brandon Kruger. But now he has to deal with Martin Jacobs also right behind him in order to get that through. A 1 second gap between Martin Jacobs and Brandon Kruger. That was at one point over 1.5. It's already down to sub 1 second. And now take a look at this. Past Rob van der Heever goes Martin Jacobs and gets closer to there. But in front of them, Stanton Augustus. Slingers Racing, Lamborghini. Same colors, but the difference is the light blue. Is he going to be a team, well, play along with it, or is he going to make it a bit difficult?
but this time Stanton does not have to defend against the likes of Van der Jeffer. All of this drama has allowed Blignaut to keep his gap of about 3 seconds up the road already, making it a bit of an impossible mountain in front of Blignaut in order to close it down there. But we do see that the lap drivers are mining out of the way here, so it is shaping up to be quite a good battle. Is it going to be between first, second and third, or only going to be second and third? This is something that we do need to find out and see what's going on here as we take a look at our monitors as we approach. 2 minutes remaining at our round 4 of the RaceFace LMU Championship.
Yeah, it's definitely gone into that little fight, and just mining out of the way has brought Stanton Augustus and Rob van der Heever back to the fight with one another. So the two of them closed up the distance. I also want to touch on 2 little fights that happened. Jan Grimmel managing to move forward, now trying to see where he can go. Gets ahead of Lucas Jabert, who is out on track. Ahead of them is actually a blue flag car, and that's the likes of Kubi, who is now just slowly but surely making room back towards the sharp end of the field. However, here's a lap down, and now we'll just be playing a little bit of fun with the likes of Jan Grimmel, because I do think the 2 drivers that are similar in pace will keep the toe with it. So closest fight on the circuit at the moment, Brandon Kruger, Martin Jacobs, Stanton Augustus, Rob van der Heever, that are the closest brawls out on track. Kruger breaking a little bit away from Martin Jacobs. This means the championship sways in favor of Blignaut versus the likes of Jacobs. Kruger is the linchpin here. If Kruger stays in second place, Blignaut gets the advantage. If Martin Jacobs gets into second, he will maintain his advantage over Blignaut. And that is where it comes in. If there's a team order that comes in, or if there's a discussion for Kruger, he's jumping up into the top 5. It's a win-win wherever he is in this grid. However, at the moment, here's a linchpin that could be that single point away for the likes of the winners of the championship, with 1 more lap to go, because here comes Blignaut. 1 more lap. Who is gonna have the run through to the end? Blignaut has now cleared past most of the field and now holds a solid 3 seconds ahead of Kruger and Jacobs, who have now got a single lap to settle it between one another. Stanton Augustus and Rob van der Heever, our second closest battle out on circuit, have got 1 more lap to settle their options. And with the likes of Bucas, who holds on to 4th place at the moment, unfortunately is going to be starting to feel it in the championship. Chris Collison holds on to 5th, a good run for him. Herman Percival, Ron Clemens, Neil Greening, Stanton Augustus, Rob van der Heever, Arne Kraskis and Peters, along with Gerald van der Venter, likes of Jan Grimmel, Lucas Jabert rounding out the pack. That's out there, and Kubi Taron in 16th. There's a good bit of positions to be gained in the championship here. The question is, who is going to be smiling at the end of it, and who is most certainly going to be feeling it come the end of the race? Because right now, we've only got a couple of corners, Cameron, and at the moment, second place is separated by 0.2 of a second through most corners.
Absolutely heart-to-mouth moments here, Stephen, and it is a good point to remember here. This is only going to be the 2nd time that Brandon Kruger in all 4 rounds is going to be on the podium. After an abysmal race at Le Mans last week, he is hoping to get a bit of retribution and get a lot more points for his championship hopes. Yes, he is a linchpin between the likes of Blignaut and Jacobs and that championship battle, but he's also throwing his hat into the championship fight when it comes to this RTA 3-way fight between the 3 of them, as well as Carl Westhuizen, unfortunately, too. But into the final corner, we see the likes of Johan Blignaut as he goes, exits the final corner, gives a weave, flashes the lights, and it goes the way of Johan Blignaut as he takes victory in round 4 here at Qatar. In 2nd place, Brandon Kruger is able to hold off the relentless attack from his teammate Martin Jacobs and take 2nd, with Martin Jacobs in 3rd, and then all the way back in 9th. Stanton Augustus is able to hold 9th after a well-fought battle between himself and Rob van der Heever, both of them flashing their lights as a way to say thank you for a brilliant battle shared between the 2 of them.
Bucas will take on 4th place. Just ahead of him is Arno Kraus, Arno Kraus will be taking 11th spot as they come across the line. Chris Collison will finish up in 5th, with Herman Percival and Ruan Kleinans, who are a little bit far from one another. Herman will take 6th. 7th will go to Ruan Kleinans. Neil Greening will end up in 9th, in 8th place, ahead of Stanton Augustus. And what a run throughout the field. A bit of a smaller race this time round, but some good racing nonetheless between the drivers and a lot of great support. And Chris Collison a bit slow, and here comes Herman trying to close up the gap. He actually just gives a little bit of room, and I think
Herman Percival has gotten Chris Collison on the line.
Oh my hat. So right at the line, Collison was running slow, and I think he lifted. I think he lifted to avoid the fuel, and Herman pipped him at the line, which he was so hoping not to happen.
We can't see the virtual energy quickly. I don't know if our broadcasting team might not be able to have it there, as it is in a race. But no, got a shake no from our producer here saying no. But on the very end, Chris Collison has dropped.
He's got a penalty.
3 positions.
He's got a penalty. He's down to 8th place. Chris Collison.
Field penalty. We've spoken about this earlier, Stephen. At Monza, we had one of our hypercars run under the required fuel limit that is needed from them, because every one of these drivers needs to have a certain amount of fuel within their cars at the end of the race. And we saw a penalty there. Chris Collison, this car is limping. Did he not have enough fuel at the very end? That is questions that is going to be hanging out in the air, and we'll only know of this at next week's race, when we look at the final results from the race and get a bit more from our stewarding team. So this is not something that I'm curious about, and it's definitely not how Chris Collison of Stingers Racing would have wanted his race to end. He had a great battle up and down this entire race, and unfortunately, if that is going to be the second time in our LMU Championship history that we've had a car penalized for being under-fueled. Yes, that enough to fuel the race, or to finish the race, but not enough to go and pass the inspection. So this is something that we will have to get back to next week. But Stephen, great battles the entire championship, the entire race so far.
So, confirmation on results. Johan Blicknote takes the victory. Brandon Kruger with Martin Jacobs finishing up in 3rd. Kerry Bucas in 4th. Herman Percival finishes up in 5th place, ahead of Ruan Kleinans in 6th. Neil Greening in 7th. 8th place is Chris Collison after a penalty. Stanton Augustus finishes up in 9th. 10th, followed by is Rob van der Heever, Arno Kraus, and Gerard van der Venter, Kirsten Peters, rounding out in 13th. A little bit further down is Jan Gamal, along with Lucas Joubert and Kobe Turan, rounding out the pack. Unfortunately, retirements coming in for the likes of Brandon Holthuizen, Jan van der Venter going out of the race and not seeing it through to the very end. So that is our rundown on confirmation, our provisional results here tonight, and our drivers putting on a phenomenal show. That being said, Cameron, it has been an exciting time here at the beautiful circuit of Qatar, and we say farewell to the deserts of Qatar after such an incredible run, and we look forward to the future. Tomorrow night, though, we are heading over to the world of Assetto Corsa Competizione to go and see drivers fight it out in the championship. Who is going to be ahead for the EG Vault ACC GT3 Championship, and who is going to be fighting their way to the top of the leaderboards tomorrow night. And we are going to be racing around the beautiful circuit of... trying to get my updated list, unfortunately, and I've gone...
to get your plane ticket sorted, because we have to get on the plane in the next 2 hours, Stephen. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to make it. No, so we are going to the absolutely beautiful Red Bull Ring. So up in the not Austrian mountains, what's it called? I can't remember now. Which mountain it is? It's part of the Alpine Mountains, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. I did not do well in geography on school, so don't quote me on that. But we're going to the amazing Red Bull Ring, full of straight curves and some interesting pit entries. Some drivers are going to be caught out of that if they haven't practiced that, Stephen. So I'm looking forward to see that, as we are going to have both our Pro and Pro-Am stream happening, as well as our AM Gold and AM Silver, where the fights in both categories are heating up, I believe.
And looking forward to see how that's going to happen there. And then also next week, I think is going, well, not I think, I know is going to be the start of our iRacing Championship, Season 2 of our GT3 Championship, with grading happening this past Friday. However, that does not mean it is closed for anybody who wish to enter. Whether you're new or old, we welcome you with open arms to join us to learn the way of iRacing and join us out on the circuit, with our first race being in a small little track with a lot of history at being known as Imola, with races happening at 8 o'clock the evening, with live stream happening. They're also brought to you by THT Production and the beautiful Stephen Cody behind the mic to bring us all the action to your living room. But from myself, Cameron de Bastos, and Stephen Koenig, I am going to say farewell to all out there. Thank you for joining us out here in the virtual grandstand, and thank you for giving us and spending your time with us out here at LMU round 4 in the Qatar under the desert moon, I can say pretty much. But thank you all for joining us, and I will see you all next week, as well as Stephen Cody. But from my side and THC Production, I'm going to steal my co-commentator's signature line and say good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody.